Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Jennifer Lee Disney, and I'm honored to be here interviewing Shirley Fishburne, Chair and Treasurer at different stages of her experience with the South Carolina Mother of the Year Association. Shirley, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Why don't we start by asking you when and where you were born and raised?
I was born in Lumberton, North Carolina, and my family moved to Manning, South Carolina when I was 3 years old. So if anybody asks me where I grew up, it's Manning, South Carolina. A very small town, southern part of the state. And my father was a John Deere dealer. So he had an opportunity to start a John Deere dealership in this agricultural area of our state. And it was a very successful move for him. There were several lean years in the beginning. I was young then, but I've been told they were lean. And we had a wonderful, it was a wonderful place to grow up. Very small community, about 3,000 people.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about your family or your early childhood experience?
Well, I was really lucky because I was one of 5 children. And I was the middle child, so I'm the one that should have all the problems. but we were, it was just an Ozzie and Harriet kind of growing up. It really was. You know, we had a neighborhood and everybody played football in our backyard and or whatever the sport was. I have 3 brothers and a sister, so, you know, it's just the best. We were a very close family, and we were not without problems. Every family has problems. My dad was an alcoholic, and so we all had to deal with that, but we dealt with it, and he got through it. He was very active in AA, and I'm really proud of the work that he did in AA. Yeah, he really was a strong person to be able to pull himself out of that. But he was a very driven person, very strong, very bright guy. My mother never went to college. She was the ultimate feminist. I know we're going to get to the feminism question, but I know my oldest brother has always said Mom was the most feminist person he'd ever known. She had, like I said, she had 5 children. She had a children's store that she opened and ran while she was raising us. So she was really a businesswoman. She didn't have the college education, and she always felt like she was inferior in some way, that she didn't have that education. But not many women were college educated then. She went to a secretarial school, and she had those skills, but she was so bright. She was a wonderful mother, wonderful mother. I'll give you one example. When I was growing up, I was a bit of a child prodigy because my musical talent was discovered pretty soon. You know, everybody has talents, but sometimes if you're a musician, your talent is recognized more in the community. So I was. And I started playing the organ in my church when I was in the 7th grade. And my piano teacher was my organ teacher. Now remember, this is a really small town. So my piano teacher taught me everything she knew about organ in about a year. She said, I'm done. You're going to have to go somewhere else. So my mother found an organ teacher in Columbia, which was an hour and 15 minutes drive one way, and took me to Columbia every other week with 4 other children at home.
Wow.
For 5 years. Yeah.
For 5 years.
For
every
5
other
years.
week to make sure you could get those lessons.
So I could get, but she did that for every child. I mean, she was very determined that we were going to have every opportunity we could. they were very proud of the fact that all 5 of us finished college. And that was one thing that Mama said she absolutely wanted us to do. So there was no question that we were going to finish. And it was not one of those households that, you know, you got to do your grades. There was just no question about you were going to do your grades. You were going to do the best you could. And it was just expected. There were no threats. It was just expected. So we were all sort of type A personalities, I guess. we just get, and they always made a deal with us, said, okay, college, we're going to put everybody through college. But after that, you're on your own. And all of us went on to further education.
Wow.
So education was very important in our household. My daddy was on the school board. And in Manning is 10 miles away from Somerton. Somerton, South Carolina, was one of the communities that filed for Brown versus the Board of Education. So that was a pivotal point in history, and my father was very much a part of that. He was on the Board of Trustees, the school board, during that time. And I remember his coming home from board meetings at 1 and 2 in the morning. And just, he said, I don't know what we're going to do. You know, we've got to do this.
Wow.
And they worked through it. And I was really proud of the way our community worked through it. It really was.
Exciting.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time. But remember, I was a child. So I can only see this through a child's lens.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a fascinating time in our history. And I was very, very proud of my father.
It sounds like your mom and your dad were big role models for you.
They really
in terms
were.
of your adult development.
Yeah.
When you became a mother, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell us anything else you want to share about your education and your young adult life. And when you think back to your own education and that time in your life, what do you remember were your dreams, goals, and aspirations at the time?
Like I said, I had this talent that was discovered early. I started piano lessons, I think, 4th grade maybe. Well, I had one piano teacher. She was a Winthrop graduate. And she was a second mother to me in a way. I remember I would always come home, I would go straight to her house for my piano lessons. And her mother would feed me a meal. I mean, a meal, not just a snack, a meal.
Wow.
So, but it was that kind of town.
Mm-hmm.
A small community that everybody looked out for each other. And so Miss Holliday would feed me my little snack or meal or whatever you want to call it, and then I would go in for my piano lesson. And my piano teacher taught me so much more than just music. She was just a great guide for me. I had a wonderful Sunday school teacher. I grew up in the Presbyterian church, and she was a real role model for me. Miss Sauls, Virginia Sauls. And I still got in my Bible, MS. It was Miss Sauls. So, you look at the MS, what does that mean? But those were her favorite Bible verses. But I could still hear her in my head. So, when Hillary Clinton says it takes a village, it really does. Because there were so many role models for me, not only of my parents, but of people in our community, in our small community, who were just, who raised us, who raised me.
Wow.
They were very, very important. And they continued that even when I left Manning. When you grow up in a small town, those bonds are really strong. They really are. When I was 18, I had decided to go to you go through all the college application stuff, and I'd made decision, and I decided on one school. Got full ride, music, the whole bit. And I hadn't really looked at Winthrop. And I don't know why. I don't remember why. I don't know if it was too far away from where I lived or, whatever reason it was. And in June, right before you would have started school in the fall, I got a call that said, you need to come up here and look at Winthrop. Okay. So Mom and I drove to Rock Hill, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and I played the organ at Winthrop, and it was jaw-dropping. I could not believe it. The organ that I played for 5 years when I was in high school was a little 2-manual. That means 2 keyboards. This had 4. And all these stops and this wonderful sound and this, just incredible experience of playing. So playing that one organ changed the direction of my college education. Wow. I was going to one school and said, nope, I want to learn from this instrument and this wonderful teacher.
And this was in Burns Auditorium?
Yeah, Burns Auditorium. David Lowry was my teacher. He was my teacher to be at Winthrop. And so I changed directions in June, 2 months before I was supposed to start. So went to Winthrop, no scholarship, no scholarship at all. All the scholarships had already been doled out. And turned down the scholarships to this other place and changed my mind on that one day of playing at Winthrop.
Wow, what a story.
So it was interesting how that flipped things
around.
around.
Support to make that change.
Absolutely.
Which is a big deal.
My parents were.
They could have said no, go where the scholarships are.
Yeah.
A lot of parents
We got 4 of the
did.
kids to educate here. You need to do this. But that's just the way they were. It was, on the big things, they were right on the money. They were right there, very supportive. And they said, okay, this is your dream, this is what you need to do. So I came to, well, let me back up. Before I got to Winthrop, those 5 years of playing the organ at my church were pretty amazing. To be able to do that. Now look at it, I can't imagine a 7th grader doing that. But think of all the things that teaches you. Responsibility. I had to be there every Sunday. The fact that I was hanging out with the choir members. There was one guy he ran the hardware store. Every Sunday he would have a piece of candy on the organ for me. It was just, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate you playing. So I got so many mentors through that experience, and got to work with like-minded folks, people who loved music. And so that love of music has guided me throughout my whole educational career. I was very active in the church because of that. One summer the secretary quit. So, okay, I can do this. So, I was just reading the bulletins. So I was like in the 10th grade. And I was typing the bulletins, and I was, making sure everybody's meetings were at the right time and all. That really teaches a lot. There's a whole lot that's on-the-job training there. But, 10th grade, I didn't think anything about it. It was just a job needed to be done. It was time to do it. So I was really active in my church growing up. I was very active in sort of a broader church, the presbytery, and got to meet really interesting people through that. So when it came time to come to Winthrop, I actually got sick. And I had 4 impacted wisdom teeth, got the wrong kind of antibiotic, had a huge reaction to that. So I missed the first semester of my freshman year. And I got here January of my freshman year, and only took like 2 classes that second semester. So I was behind. The whole time I was in Winthrop, I was behind. So I had to go all summers, all the summer schools. And so that afforded me an opportunity to be on campus, to be around, and I got to meet a lot of people that way. But loved my time at Winthrop. Just loved it. It was just the best. I just thought it was great. It's what, coming as a second semester person, one of the girls in my hall said, "Oh, God, you were so pale." You were just pathetic. Because I was. I mean, I lost like 50 pounds. I mean, it was awful. You know, I was really just this tiny little person. But I still wasn't quite healthy that second semester. But it was kind of fun because all I did was practice the organ and go to English class. What could be bad? What could be so bad about that? So those 2 things that I love to do, practice and read. But early education, I can definitely say that experience in playing the organ at my church, that responsibility, and then coming to Winthrop, because we got pushed really hard really quickly. When I was at Winthrop was the heyday of the organ majors. We had 20 organ majors.
Wow.
And now there, maybe 1 or 2. But that pendulum of it's swinging. I think it'll swing back. But just learning from the other students. They were so good. Just fabulous students. And
It's a really strong music program as well.
absolutely, yeah.
So did you have aspirations to go on to become a famous organist, to go to
I really
graduate
did.
school in music? Like, tell us what
I
happened.
really
The
did.
trajectory of that music career. What happened?
Well, my senior year, the school where I was going, it actually moved. It moved from New York City to New Haven, Connecticut. So they closed it down for a year. So the year that I would have gone to graduate school after I finished Winthrop, it just didn't happen. So after that year, I mean, things kind of changed, and a year makes such a big difference in your life. So I did go and get my master's. I got the first performance master's at Winthrop. So that was kind of fun, because I was kind of a guinea pig. I was kind of like, okay, let's see if she can do this. Well, maybe not. But it was a good degree to get. So I have an undergraduate and a master's in performance from Winthrop.
I thought so.
And then from there, I went on to University of North Carolina in Greensboro and got a doctorate in music education. So I figured that I needed to kind of expand my horizons a little bit, make myself more employable.
And you also taught at Winthrop University, right?
I did. So I came back after I got my doctorate and taught at Winthrop part-time for a lot of years. Yeah. After I got back from Winthrop is when Cody and I got married.
So that's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
next. Tell us how you met your husband.
I was a junior at Winthrop, and I got a toothache. And I went to David Lowry, who was my organ teacher and my mentor, and I said, David, no, I didn't call him David then. Dr. Lowry, what should I do? And he said, well, you need to go to my dentist. So I went to Dr. Fishburne, and he took care of this tooth right here. And so, a while later, I get this note on the message board at the school. Cody Fishburne wants you to call him. I thought, Cody Fishburne, I wonder if that's the same person as Dr. Fishburne. I didn't know. Yeah, I thought, I wonder why Dr. Fishburne is calling me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I wonder what did, I know I paid my bill. I mean, why is he calling me? And so he asked me out. But I said, well, after we got together, I said, why did you ask me out? Because, I'm sure you had a lot of Winthrop students. And he said, I was really impressed that you said you would pay the bill out of your checking account. Good. Glad was a romantic answer.
He was impressed with your financial.
He was very impressed with my financial ability.
That's great.
So, yeah, Cody and I dated for a long time. Cody was 43 when we got married. He had never been married before. And he just, it was a big plunge for him. So we were married, and it's just 35 years later, it's just been great.
Wonderful.
Just a wonderful,
Congratulations.
wonderful relationship.
What activities did you get involved in terms of family, community? You talked a little bit about education. We talked a little bit about employment. But are there any other activities you want to share before and after your marriage? Other kinds of activities you got involved in?
Well, because of my involvement or my love of music, I was involved with a lot of arts organizations in Rock Hill. There was used to have what we call the Fine Arts Committee, and it was a wonderful town and gown collaboration between Winthrop and people in the community. And I was in an interesting position because I was teaching at Winthrop, but I also was involved in the community with a lot of arts things. So I served as a chair of that committee for several years and stayed in that organization for a long time. And we went for 25 years. It was a pretty long-standing relationship, that committee. But, times change. So that is dissolved now. The Arts Council took some of the responsibilities away. We did a wonderful Artists in the Schools program that we did, and we chose these wonderful artists who came and worked in the schools, public schools. Being a musician is a really wonderful profession. It really is. It allowed me to continue practicing my profession on a pretty high level as my children grew. When our children were very young, we had 2 daughters. Our daughters are 2 years apart, and they're both very artsy. What a shock. The one is a visual artist and one is a musical person. So I was always able to do musical activities that would involve them and their friends. So I taught what it was called Orff music, ORFF. Carl Orff was a music educator who developed a way of teaching that incorporated musical instruments like xylophones and glockenspiels and drums. And he designed these instruments for children. So when you think of a xylophone, you usually think of a big instrument. Well, he made it child size. And it's pretty involved to be certified to teach Orff. So I went through all the certification, which was about 3 summers of training, 3 different summers, and taught Orff music at Winthrop for children. And had a pretty, I don't remember how long I did that. It pretty much was when my children aged out of it. I went into other things. So when that was so much fun. Just so fun. I'll have to tell one quick story that's so typical. A lot of little boys in this class, and little rowdy boys, and the Orff instruments are played with the xylophones are played with mallets. Well, I have like 3-year-olds playing with mallets, if you can imagine that. And I couldn't think, okay, how can I get them not to use those mallets when I'm talking? And one way I came up with was, I'll tell them bunny ears. I'll tell them to stick the mallets on top of their heads and do bunny ears.
That's great.
Well, it really worked.
Genius.
All I had to do was do bunny ears, and they'd do this, Well, at the end of every semester, in December and then in May, I would have this show and tell for the parents. And we've got this really close friend who has two little boys, and they were both in this class. And, you know, they were just classic little boys. And so as soon as I did bunny ears to start the class, you know, the dad was sitting in the show and tell thing. He got so mad because he just knew his boys were misbehaving. So it wasn't, you know, they weren't misbehaving at all. They were doing exactly what I asked them to do. So their dad just came over there and just gave them a fit. But as the children aged, I did children's choirs. So through the Episcopal Church, they had a wonderful choir program. David Larry again asked me to come and join his staff over at the Episcopal Church, and so I did that for about 10 years. And had lots of children from the community who weren't even Episcopalians. They'd come to sing. And we took trips. We went to the National Cathedral. We went to Williamsburg. We did a lot of fun things. I mean, so it was a bigger circle, much bigger circle. I wanted the children to experience singing with lots of kids. Yeah. And so we did some wonderful combined choir things. It got me involved in something called Royal School of Church Musicians. And again, you know, the standards just keep getting higher. And you know, this is a school of thought that comes out of England. And it's a whole program, and that's how we ran the program. So we had 4 choir camps at Winthrop. Wow. During the summer. So, and this was actually for girls, and there were girls from all over the country who would come to Winthrop for 2 weeks in the summer, and we'd get a director in and an organist, and we'd sing in Charlotte, and it was a great experience. So I enjoyed it as a profession, but also my children were able to experience that, and several other children in the community.
So you were very active as a musician in your profession, in the community.
Right.
For employment, for camps, for community activities, and you're raising 2 daughters. So speak a little bit about, if you can, how you were able to balance all the work that you were doing outside the home with all the work that you were doing inside the home as a mom. How are you able to balance everything you were doing?
It was, I had a lady who came and helped me, and she was wonderful. Her name was Helen Young. And so and I also taught part-time. So I didn't have the committee responsibilities that you have if you're a full-time person. I was able to teach and go home. So that was a tremendous difference than someone who teaches full-time. The downside of that is that you end up teaching, you end up bringing a lot home. So there was a lot that I just did at home. But you also are not compensated. You're part-time. And so I did part-time for a lot of years and just got to the point where, I think I'm done. So colleges take advantage of part-time instructors. It was wonderful for me because I could do that, but when the girls got older and I was ready to go full-time, there was not a position.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That
yeah.
For women,
right,
and men, but it seems mostly women tend to benefit from the part-time employment. Allows for flexibility
exactly.
when you're raising your kids when they're young, but it also allows for exploitive salaries.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the pros and cons to that flexibility of women in the workforce and part-time work.
Well, fortunately, Cody was a dentist, and the money issue was not. But if I were a single mom, I wouldn't have been doing that. I would have been doing something else for sure. But I was very fortunate in that regard. Very fortunate.
What does motherhood mean to you?
Best thing that ever happened to me. It really was. Yeah, it was just something I always wanted to be, was a mother. I think motherhood is one of the most intimate connections that you have with anyone. I still talk to my girls every day. I know people will think that's crazy, but we're very close. And, they're in their 30s, and I talk to them every day.
I love that. It's beautiful.
And, the beauty of cell phones. But, of course, I didn't do that when I was growing up because we didn't have cell phones. Had we had cell phones, we would have. But we're still very connected. And it's nice to have adult children. We're really very close. It's a very strong bond. But I think that bond is just so very, very strong with a mother and a child. It really is. And we have our first grandchild, and that's a whole new experience. So we're loving that and trying to get to see our little fella as much as we can, little Coates.
That's great. Talk to us a little bit about how you became a member of the South Carolina Mother of the Year Association.
Ann Edwards called me up. My husband Cody was on the board of trustees at the medical university for 25 years. And that allowed us to get to know Ann and Jim Edwards. Because Jim was the president of the medical university at that time. And two finer people you will never know. They are just the best. Such gifted people who are so generous with their time and talents. So I got to know Ann, and she called me up and said, would you be on this committee? Our children were really young. I've been on the committee over 20 years.
Wow.
And, when your children are really young, it's hard to go to Columbia and make this commitment, and, because there were several meetings a year. I quit once. For about 2 years. She called me back. She called me back. So it was kind of like, you're back on. But I have loved it. I have loved that association. I really have. They're just wonderful women. And it's allowed me to get to know people throughout the state that I never would have gotten to know.
You kind of predicted my next question. How did your membership on this committee impact you, your family, your community, etc.? Let's talk a little bit about what your membership on the selection committee, selecting Mothers of the Year annually. I know you served as chair, you've served as treasurer, meeting the other committee members and Mothers of the Year. Just talk to us a little bit about the impact that has had on you.
It's a very humbling experience. These women that we chose were and are amazing women. And when I look at all they've done, I look at all that their children have done, it's truly amazing. And some of these women did it on a shoestring. You know that they worked their entire lives, not just in the home, but out of the home. And their children were just incredible. And their grandchildren. It's a ripple effect. I just went to the 90th birthday of one of our women about 2 weeks ago in Columbia, 90th birthday party. And I met all of these people. I'd heard about them, all these children and grandchildren. She's so cute. This Mary Kate Brierley Glasser, she says that she has 10 grandchildren and they each know which finger they are on her hands.
I think she told us that.
Yeah.
I love that story.
So she has 10 grandchildren, and she has 10 great-grandchildren.
So they
10
each have
great-grandchildren,
one.
yeah.
Wow.
But I met one gal, she's 32, and she said, let's see, I'm this one. She said, I'm that thumb. So, yeah. But just to get to meet these people and talk to them, it's just an amazing experience. The women on the committee are so generous with their time, their talents. They are just so giving. And this is just one tiny thing that they do. But they give so much. They really do. It has enriched my life. I can truly say that.
Tell us about the work that you and Martha Cranford the project you undertook in terms of recognizing 70 years of remarkable women and wanting to produce the book that's there on the table next to you. Talk us through that project a little bit.
Well, I think when we realized where we were as an organization, that we were not going to be associated with the national organization, and that it was time for us to, that times had changed, that women organizations had changed. We realized that we needed to do something to honor these 70 South Carolina Mothers of the Year. And we toyed with so many different things. We couldn't come up with anything, but we wanted something that was lasting. We thought about a sculpture. We thought about an piece of art. But then we also said we wanted to give back to these women. We wanted to give something to them and their families and their communities. So we kept knocking around different ideas, and we came up with the idea of a book. I know Martha Cranford and I we always ride together because we're the Rock Hill people. We're the Rock Hill contingent. And on the way back from one of the meeting that we were discussing this, we kept saying, oh, well, who can we get to write this book? Because people do this ghostwriting thing. We've had some things in Rock Hill where people did a history of Rock Hill. We kept brainstorming on these ideas. It's really dangerous when Martha and I get in the same car riding together.
I've been there. It is dangerous.
So we kept thinking about different things that we could maybe do as a group. And we realized that we had sort of a time frame, kind of a short time frame. So the more we drove and the more we talked, I said, well, Martha, I was the editor of my high school paper. Did you ever do any writing? And she said, our daughter is an English major. She's an English teacher. So I love to read and write. And I said, well, what do you think? Do you think we could do this? So that's really how the whole thing started. Martha and I were just kind of brainstorming. We kept going. And it has to be done in, how long? 3 months, 3 or 4 months. So I have a group that I eat breakfast with on Fridays. Gil DiGiorgio, president of Winthrop's wife, who's a really good friend of mine. I started talking this idea over with her at breakfast. I said, well, what are we going to do? We just kept chewing on the idea. And she's, without even blinking, she said, you need to call Jennifer Disney. And I said, well, tell me about Jennifer. So she started telling me about you and your interest in women's studies. And she said, she's great. You're just going to love her. And I said, well, on that recommendation, we're going to call her. So we called you. And Martha and I were still in the what if stage. Could we possibly do this? But it wasn't until we talked to you, Jennifer, that we realized this can happen. You helped us crystallize our ideas and get them in an orderly fashion. So it was the collaboration with you that made us realize that we could do it. So tell me about women's power. Women's power is feeding off one another. So seriously, that is the way this book came from, a germ of an idea and really worked it into reality.
Well, what a beautiful story.
But it's true.
I have Gail to thank
Yeah.
for connecting me to you and Martha, because this has been just a beautiful collaboration. And I'm just so honored that you would think to invite me into this process with the book.
We could have done it without you. Are you kidding?
Well, you brought me such joy and such knowledge and such wisdom, and this intergenerational conversation that we've had across 3 or more generations, probably 4 when you think about it. It's been such an honor, and I appreciate so much your sharing that story. It really means a lot.
Well, that is really how the ball got rolling, and there were lots of times that Martha and I would look at each other and go, whose idea was this? It was a crazy idea. But Martha and I have different gifts, and we have worked together on different projects over the years, and we each know what we bring to the table. And I can tell you that if there's a project, I want Martha Cranford on my team.
You two are two dynamic women, and I will tell anybody, if you want something done,
You're
I'll tell you
kind.
to call Martha Cranford.
You're
Shirley
kind.
Fishburne.
We work on different calendars. I'm a morning person, she's a night person, so she would send me an email at whatever time, and I'd wake up at 6 and start working on it.
That's perfect.
So, I mean, it was kind of like, okay, she'd give me a task, I'd start working on it, I'd go to bed, send her an email, she'd work on that. So we had a round-the-clock working. So it was a fun project. It was a hard project, but I'm so glad we did it. It's like most things you do. You kind of dig in, say, this is what I'm going to do. You do it, and then when you look back on it, go, whoa, did that really happen?
Exactly. It was a true labor of love from
yeah.
Ann Edwards and Gail Giorgio to Martha to you to me to all the amazing women that we've read about and that we've subsequently interviewed for this oral history project. We just could not be more thankful.
The interesting thing about this day, I don't know if Martha told you about it, was we have records on each one of these women. Because as you go through the process of being chosen as Mother of the Year, you have to fill out all these forms. And the women always told us that the best part was that our children had to put on paper what it meant to have you as their mother. Can you imagine? Putting down on paper what it meant to you to have this wonderful person to be your mother. So they said that was the best part, and I believe it.
Yeah.
I wish I had done that for my mother.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I had put it in on black and white. There's something about writing something down that makes it more real.
Mm-hmm.
But we had all these records of 7 years of women, but then we had a whole bunch of women that didn't have records for, about 20 years. And that was a big problem. So Martha, being the research person that she is, she's so detailed, she started working in the Winthrop Library. So we had Winthrop right there. We had the state newspaper archives. And our organization was started by the by the editor of the state newspaper. So we had some wonderful archives to go by on most women, not all of them. So I tell all the families of people in there, if your mother only got a short paragraph, it's because we just didn't have much information. We really didn't. And so in order to be equitable, we tried to keep it pretty much the same for each woman. Because we could have written a book on each woman easily. But, you know, that would have taken a lot longer than we had. We had an end. We had to finish. But the
research was amazing. I was with Martha and going through the microfilm in those
Yeah.
rooms, and it was, you two put so much effort into this, and it's such to have this product, to have it written down, and you added so much. I know, Shirley, you added a lot of the historical, trying to put people in the context of the decades and what was happening in politics and history at the time. So it's a beautiful tribute to these women because it puts them in context of these larger political and historical questions and times in which they balanced
Exactly.
home and work and family and motherhood. And so you should feel very proud of that book.
We were real pleased. And the other person who played a key part in that was our graphic designer. I don't know if Martha mentioned Clyde Adams, but he was the best.
Amazing. He made that. Why don't you hold it up? Just open up one page, because for people that haven't seen it yet, to see what he did with the layout, the way he would lay out a photograph.
I love the way he had the timeline.
Yes.
We did it by decades. We decided to do it by decades. But he would have the timeline here of what was happening during that particular time in history. And then we tried to have each woman's picture as much as we could.
And he would overlay photographs with
Yeah.
newspaper articles, just like that. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I mean, we had this wonderful picture of these ladies, and this was one of our first teas that we had. South Carolina was unusual because we were the only state that would entertain our Mothers of the Year with a tea at the governor's mansion. And if you were chosen for South Carolina Mother of the Year for that year, you got to invite 250 of your closest friends
That's amazing.
to come to the governor's mansion
Unbelievable.
and go for tea. So I think we started that in the late 60s. And that was,
And it
'cause-
lasted through until the
Yeah,
final year that they
until
were
the final
staying in
year.
the state, right?
right. So it was, again, these women just made it happen. These women like Janet Cotter and Rhett Gant and Callie Wingus. Callie's husband was in the State House, and she had all these wonderful receptions. She knew where everything was in the governor's mansion. She would go, and the governor's wife would probably not even know where they were. She said, "No, you've got this up in that cabinet." And she'd go over there and say, "Yep, that's where it was."
Wow.
And she just knew where stuff was, because she had, these were movers and shakers.
Yes,
These
that's
women
exactly
were.
right.
They really were. So let me see this.
That's one thing I've learned from these interviews. These women were truly movers and shakers. in
Oh,
our state.
absolutely. So these old wonderful photographs that we have of these women, Clyde took them and just laid them out, and they're just beautiful. Now what we did was to take our living mothers. We wanted to take the living mothers and give them a little bit more exposure. So we took 2 pages for each of them, and we were able to give a little bit more information about them. He always had where they came from in the state, showed it where it was, and then we took their year. Each mother, when they would be elected the Mother of the Year, they would get a call in January. On January the 1st. On January the 1st, you'd get the call that said you have been selected to be the South Carolina Mother of the Year for this year. And after you get through the tears, and you're kidding, then we start preparing them for the year. And in that year, we'll tell you about the tea. They get to invite folks to the tea. But then they sometimes would go speak throughout the state at different organizations. And then we would also encourage them to go to the National Convention. So in preparation for the National Convention, they had to get a portfolio together. And the portfolio, that was what I was talking about. The children had to write about their mother and what was the most things that they admired the most. So at the end of that calendar year, they would come and present what they had done that year to our committee, the selection committee. And that's what some of these pictures are here. So the ladies would tell us different meetings that they had attended. If they got to go to the National Convention, they would talk about that. And so we felt like we really got to see what the year meant to them.
And as chair of the selection committee for, I think, 3 years, you were
Mhm.
able to make that call 3
Mhm.
times on January 1st.
Mhm.
What was that like, hearing a winner on the other end of that line?
You know, one lady said, I'll be right back with you. Just come. You're kidding, right? No, they're just thrilled, just absolutely thrilled. So it's a real treat to share that moment with them. It really is.
Thank you so much for talking us through that, because I think it really helps younger women who are growing up in a generation that won't have the teas at the governor's mansion, that won't
Yeah.
experience this. You kind of just talked it through what that experience was like for the mothers and for the committee members, and I think we'll have this treasure of this interview so that can live on.
Well, I could say that it was such a highlight to get to meet the friends of the mothers. They were so proud. So proud. Just so proud to know these women, and so proud that they got the recognition that they deserved.
Do you think women get the recognition that they deserve in society as mothers, maybe historically and then present day? Think about women's roles and women's work as mothers. Do you think we adequately recognize that in society?
I don't think, no, I don't think we do. I think in the family unit we do, but as far as communities, no, I don't think we do. The family unit is imperative. It holds us together as a society. I think that's one reason that we're not being held together too much right now, because the family unit is not as strong as it has been. But I'm not sure if recognition is what we, we've talked about it, Jennifer, and that's one thing I really was so impressed and realized that you were going to be a great part of our team, because you recognized it as such a value as a woman and as a scholar in women's studies, because you recognize how important motherhood is to our society. And I thought, she gets it. She's going to be a real asset to what we were trying to say.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that.
I really, motherhood holds everything together.
Do you think, you know what you had to do to balance your life as a working mother, part-time working, community active mother. How do you think women today handle or struggle with balancing work and family? Do you think it's harder? Do you think it's easier? I mean, your daughters, maybe two examples. Just talk a little bit about that generational change, the changes in women balancing work and family.
I think that I can speak for my own children. For my girls, I see more involvement in their husbands, and it is more of a team in this next generation. I do see that. And I think it's because we've raised our sons to be that way. We've raised our daughters to, I don't want to say demand it, but expect it.
Good.
And I feel like that it's a real partnership for young couples today. But I do notice that it takes two members working. It just does. It's very unusual when you see a family that doesn't have both parents working. We were just at Chick-fil-A on Friday, and we were all at the little jungle gym part, and there were 5 different groups of people there. 4 of them were grandparents with their grandchildren, and there was one mother there with her child. I thought, that's probably about right. Seriously,
Yeah.
So,
It gets back to you saying earlier, it truly takes a village.
it does,
Especially when both parents are working outside the home.
Exactly.
It takes a village to raise our children.
right. I wish, and it's probably jumping ahead of some of your questions, but I wish we had universal child care for everyone. To make it easier on family units financially.
I was
do.
going to mention that, when we talked about, does society recognize women's work as mothers? And I was going to mention public policy. That's
Yeah.
one area in which you can truly recognize
Right.
that work or not. And so
Right.
you went right there in terms of a policy
I think
choice for a society.
that's one that we are way behind on. Child care workers are probably paid less than any teacher, and that's backwards, because it's such an important time in a child's life. In France, the childcare workers are paid like someone with a master's in education, because they realize how important that early childhood education is. And it's universal. Everybody has childcare. And I know your taxes have to go up, but I would pay more taxes for everybody to get the same start. We've had Head Start, we've had different programs, but it still is not getting at the problem. That there are still so many families who do not get the same support that they could.
You may already be answering this question, but I'm going to ask it now. What do you think are the most important issues facing women today?
I think childcare. I do think that's a major issue. I think women are in the workforce considered equals to a point. I don't think after you get to a certain level that women are taken as seriously as men in certain corporations. I'm hoping that's going to change. I think it will. It's an interesting time to be alive. I think it's a very interesting time to see the different changes. I can say that when I was in college, I could have gone into a different field, but it was still, most people were teachers or nurses. We didn't have quite the choices that our children do now. There were some who were adventuresome and went on and did these things. I just wasn't one of them. I think that our children, because of this partnership that these young families are forming, that they're going to do great things. I really hope so. I'm counting on it.
That's a good segue to, for me, is my last question. What does feminism mean to you?
Feminism to me means being who you are destined to be. And I take that from a female point of view, but also I have to look at these young men too. I want them to become the people they were destined to be. I don't want, the pendulum has been swinging. It's got to get back where it's an equal thing. As I see a lot of guys who are being overlooked or undervalued for expressing views in the arts and being labeled for that reason. And nothing gets my ire up more than that. It's not fair. And it just, why do we have to put labels on anybody? That really upsets me. When a man expresses a very gentle emotion or a sensitive emotion, and all of a sudden people turn him off because he's different.
Do you think feminism can help us by challenging this kind of gender roles,
Yes.
stereotypes for men and
And
women?
women,
It can help
exactly.
further liberate boys and girls and men and women to be who they were destined to be.
To be who they were
as you
destined
put
to
it.
be.
That's a beautiful definition.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I did a lot of reading in the 70s and 80s, Betty Friedan, Marilyn French. I did all of that. And I loved it. I ate it up. But I must say, I didn't do it at Winthrop. Winthrop was a sleepy place. It really was. I have to say that.
When it came to women's studies and gender and feminism.
Yeah. I finished in 72, my undergraduate degree.
So you had to find it. You went out and found it yourself, but it wasn't
Yeah,
there.
it was kind of, yeah.
Well, I'm happy to say I'm part of the 2000s
Exactly.
generation helping to bring it to Winthrop.
Exactly. You know, I want to take some of your classes for that reason because I feel like that's a gap in my education that I missed. Seriously, you know, I just do reading on my own. But I really, yeah, I've talked to a friend of mine who went to Northwestern University, the male, and he was saying they were marching during the Vietnam War, and I said, oh dear.
You weren't watching here?
We weren't marching here. We just weren't. We were a very sleepy place. But it's so nice to see Winthrop change. I love it. I love it. You know, I really do. I'm so proud of that university and everything that it represents.
I agree. I don't think we're sleepy anymore.
No, not at all. You know,
I think you're right.
I just think we're right in there where we need to be, and we're serving the community, and I'm just so proud of that school.
Well, we are so proud to be housing the South Carolina Mother of the Year archives, oral histories in the Louise Pettis Archives at Winthrop University. And I know you and Martha had the opportunity to choose USC, to choose somewhere else, and we are so grateful that you chose Winthrop University to be the place to house the many women who, many of whom did have Winthrop University affiliations, many had other Columbia College and other affiliations in the state, but we're so pleased that we can be the home of this archives. And just thank you so much for reaching out to me, you and Martha, to join this team and to bring us this project. Thank you.
It was the logical place. I mean, it was, Martha and I, it was an emotional decision for us because we love Winthrop so much, so proud of Winthrop. But for other members of the committee, it was not a hard sell. They felt like this was the place it needed to be. Winthrop was the school for women in our state.
That's right.
And it's where we needed to have this archive. So we're hopeful that these records will prompt research. We hope some students like Michaela here will do some research. And who knows where the next chapter will be.
Exactly.
That's for the next generation to take. So we're honored to be a part of it. We're honored to have you at Winthrop. We really are.
Thank you.
And thank you for saying yes.
Well, you're right. This could be. We have the data for master's degrees and doctoral dissertations
We do.
from this project and these
We do.
videos, these 33 oral history archives. So I look forward to seeing what the next generation will do with this. And again, just want to thank you for getting me involved. Do you have any questions for us or anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered?
I mentioned my children. I don't think I ever mentioned their names. I think I probably do need to say that. My daughter.
We have 2 months until the battery dies.
Okay, I'll be quick. My daughter Ann is married to Will Hamilton, and our daughter Mary is married to Jeff Hayden. So I did want to mention both of their names because we love our sons-in-law. We struck it rich when we added them to our family.
And your grandchild?
Coats and one on the way.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you for the interview.
Thanks.